She was born into privilege, but destined for pain. Audrey Kathleen Rustin, known to the world as Audrey Hepburn, entered life May 4, 1929, in Brussels, Belgium. Her parents, Joseph Victor Anthony Rustin and Ella von Hemstra, believed they had given their daughter a life of comfort and status. Her mother was a Dutch baroness, her father an English banker with charm, discipline, and an obsession with perfection. But beneath the polished family portrait, something was already cracking. Audrey's father was strict, emotionally distant, and quick to anger. He demanded order, manners, and silence. He could be affectionate in public, yet cold and unpredictable behind closed doors. He would line up his shoes with military precision, inspect the servants' work, and expect the same from his children. Audrey, a shy and sensitive girl, would learn early how to stay quiet to keep the peace. The world outside was changing fast. Europe was sliding toward war, but inside their home, another kind of war was already brewing, the war between their parents. Joseph's political sympathies leaned dangerously toward fascism. He admired the discipline of Nazi Germany and spoke openly about it. Audrey's mother, though ambitious and social, shared some of those misguided fascist leanings, a stain that would follow her for decades. Then, one morning, in 1935, everything collapsed. Audrey's father walked out, without warning, without goodbye. He simply vanished, leaving behind a wife and child who would never understand why. For Audrey, it was the wound that would define her life. Years later, she would say softly, "It was the most traumatic event of my life, losing my father." She would spend decades searching for him, longing for him even when the world adored her. The little girl who once waited by the window for his return would grow into a woman forever chasing love that could never stay. After the divorce, her mother took Audrey to the Netherlands, a quiet town called Arnhem, her ancestral home. It was supposed to be safe, but the year was 1939. The shadow of war was already moving across Europe. Audrey was only 10 years old when she first heard the sound of bombs echoing in the distance. The world that had once promised ballet, laughter, and family had turned into something dark and uncertain. The perfection her father demanded was gone. Now survival was all that mattered. When the German army invaded the Netherlands in May 1940, the quiet streets of Arnhem turned into a nightmare. Audrey was only 11 years old. The child who once practiced ballet in sunlit rooms now moved through shadows, silent, cautious, terrified. Her mother, Baroness Ella von Hemstra, had initially admired the discipline of the Germans. Like many Europeans in the 1930s, she mistook authority for order. But that illusion shattered quickly. When the Nazi occupation began, reality showed its cruelty. Friends disappeared overnight. Families were torn apart. The Baroness realized her mistake too late, and Audrey, the sensitive, watchful child, saw it all. The elegant homes of her youth became places of hunger. Food vanished. Neighbors traded jewelry for potatoes. Audrey's family survived on bread made from tulip bulbs and water mixed with flour. She became malnourished, frail and pale, the kind of fragile beauty that would later define her look on screen. Still, in the darkest moments, Audrey found a way to hold on to light. She had always loved ballet. During the occupation, she continued to train in secret in unheated rooms with wooden floors that creaked under her trembling feet. But her dancing became more than art. It became resistance. She performed at secret gatherings to raise money for the Dutch underground movement. She and other young girls would dance for audiences who risked their lives just to watch. When the applause came, it wasn't for entertainment, it was for hope. In between performances, Audrey carried messages for the resistance tucked into her shoes. If she were caught, the punishment could have been death. But she did it anyway, quietly, bravely, without ever telling her mother. The war dragged on. By the winter of 1944, known as the Hunger Winter, the Netherlands was starving. Audrey's uncle was executed for his role in the resistance. Her half-brother was sent to a labor camp in Germany. She and her mother spent weeks hiding in cellars as bombs fell overhead, the sound shaking the walls like thunder. Years later, when people spoke of her poise and grace, they never realized where it came from. It wasn't just natural elegance, it was control born from fear. The quiet in her voice, the stillness in her movements, the calm behind her eyes, all of it came from a girl who had learned to survive by being invisible. "The war made me who I am," she said. "It taught me compassion and how to value peace above all things." By the time the war ended in 1945, Audrey was 16, starving, scarred, but alive. She had seen death, betrayal, and cruelty, but she had also seen courage. And from that courage, a dream began to take shape again. The dream of dancing, of performing, of being part of a world filled with light instead of darkness. After the war ended in 1945, Audrey was no longer the carefree child she once was. Hunger had hollowed her face, fear had settled in her bones. But within her, something unbreakable had survived, a quiet determination to live beautifully, even after seeing so much ugliness. She returned to her first love, ballet. Under the guidance of Sonia Gaskell in Amsterdam and later Marie Rambert in London, she practiced relentlessly. Yet her war-torn body, weakened by years of malnutrition, betrayed her. She realized she would never become a prima ballerina. It was a heartbreaking truth for a girl who once danced through the darkness to stay alive. So she turned to acting, first out of practicality, then out of destiny. She took small parts as a chorus girl in West End musicals in high-button shoes and sauce tartare. Her presence was magnetic, even in silence. Directors noticed the tall, slender girl with the haunted eyes. In 1951, fate intervened. Audrey was cast in a small role in the French film Monte Carlo Baby. While filming in the south of France, she met Colette, the famous French novelist. Colette was captivated. She saw in Audrey the exact image of her beloved character, Gigi. Without hesitation, Colette declared, "Voila, there's our Gigi." Soon, Audrey was on Broadway, starring in Gigi, 1951. The audiences adored her. Critics called her a revelation. But even then, she remained humble. The same girl who once hid from bombs, now bowing under the bright lights of New York. Hollywood came calling soon after. Director William Wyler was searching for a fresh face to star opposite Gregory Peck in a romantic comedy about a princess who escapes her royal duties for one magical day in Rome. The film was Roman Holiday, 1953. When Audrey auditioned, Wyler said she had everything: innocence, elegance, and that rare quality you can't define, grace. Gregory Peck, too, saw her brilliance. He famously insisted her name appear alongside his, saying, "You've got to give her equal billing. She's going to win the Oscar." He was right. Audrey Hepburn won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her very first major film role. Overnight, she became the new face of Hollywood. Not the sultry bombshells of the 1950s, but something gentler, purer, infinitely more human. She followed with Sabrina, 1954, War and Peace, 1956, and Funny Face, 1957. Each role seemed to mirror a part of her real self: elegance born from suffering, innocence touched by sadness. And when Breakfast at Tiffany's premiered in 1961, Audrey wasn't just a star, she was an icon. But even as she stood at the height of fame, she often said she didn't understand it. She confessed, "I never thought I'd be in movies. I wasn't beautiful enough, I wasn't talented enough. I just tried to be myself." That humility, that quiet self-doubt only made her more beloved. The world saw perfection.
Audrey saw survival. Every step she took in front of a camera carried the weight of the girl who once danced for freedom and now danced for hope. At the height of her fame, Audrey Hepburn seemed untouchable, the image of grace, the dream of an entire generation. But behind the flawless poise was a woman quietly breaking. The same heart that made her beloved on screen was the one that would betray her off it. In 1954, she married Mel Ferrer, an actor and director with a commanding presence and a mysterious air. To outsiders, they were the perfect pair, the elegant muse and the sophisticated artist. But those who knew them well saw the imbalance from the beginning. Mel was controlling, intense, and often jealous of Audrey's success. He wanted to mold her, to direct her career, and to shape her image as if she were one of his stage productions. Audrey, who had spent her childhood yearning for protection, mistook his dominance for strength. She once said, "He needed me to make him feel strong, and I needed him to make me feel safe." Together they starred in War and Peace, 1956, playing lovers caught in the chaos of history, but their real-life story was far less romantic. Audrey longed for children, for the family she never truly had. But after several miscarriages, her health began to fail. The endless filming schedules, the stress, and the fragility of her body, once starved by war, made pregnancy dangerous. When she finally gave birth to her son Sean in 1960, she called it the miracle of my life. She devoted herself completely to motherhood. But Mel's insecurities deepened. He resented her fame, her independence, her ability to capture hearts around the world while he faded into the background. The marriage began to crumble. There were whispers of infidelity, long silences, and emotional distance. The woman the world saw as flawless was now living in quiet sorrow, smiling for cameras, crying behind closed doors. By 1968, the fairy tale was over. Audrey divorced Ferrer after 14 years of marriage. She was exhausted, fragile, and lonely once again. Yet she still believed in love. A year later, she married Andrea Dotti, an Italian psychiatrist who promised her peace. For a time, she found it, strolling the streets of Rome, raising their son Luca, trying to live as an ordinary woman. But old patterns returned. Dotti, charming and restless, was unfaithful. Paparazzi caught him with younger women, and the headlines were cruel. Audrey endured it all with quiet dignity. She didn't fight, didn't rage. She simply withdrew, further and further away from the world that adored her. "I tried to build the perfect life," she said softly, "but perfection costs too much." The woman who had embodied eternal grace was now learning that grace alone could not save a heart from breaking. She had given everything, to her art, her lovers, her family, but in return she was left with emptiness. Hollywood continued to call, offering new roles, new dreams, but Audrey no longer cared for the applause. The cameras had taken too much. She was searching for something purer, something she had lost long ago, the peace she had known only in fleeting moments of kindness and compassion. And soon she would find it again, not in studios or scripts, but in the most unexpected place, the forgotten corners of the world.
By the late 1960s, Audrey Hepburn was tired, not just of the cameras, but of herself within them. The roles, the fame, the endless applause, none of it filled the silence that had grown inside her. She had become what the world wanted her to be, but lost touch with who she truly was. So, in the early 1970s, she did the unthinkable. She walked away from Hollywood. She left the red carpets, the flashbulbs, the interviews, and retreated to a quiet farmhouse in Tollechenes, Switzerland, far from the noise of fame. To the world, it looked like retirement. To Audrey, it was recovery. She devoted herself entirely to her sons, Sean and Luca. She cooked for them, gardened with them, and read them bedtime stories every night. After years of playing princesses and dream girls, she finally lived a role she had always wanted, a mother, a simple woman, unguarded and free. But the world had not forgotten her. In the 1980s, Audrey was approached by UNICEF, the United Nations agency that helps children in need. They wanted her to lend her name, her voice, her presence. At first she hesitated. She said, "I'm not sure I deserve to be a spokesperson for anything." But when she visited refugee camps and villages in Ethiopia, Somalia, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, something within her awakened. The faces of starving children brought back the ghosts of her own past, the hunger, the fear, the helplessness of wartime Holland. She saw herself in them, the same wide eyes, the same quiet suffering. From that moment, Audrey's purpose changed. She became UNICEF's Goodwill Ambassador, traveling to some of the most devastated places on Earth. She carried food, comfort, and kindness, not as a celebrity, but as a survivor who understood. Those who met her said she moved with the same grace she always had, but now it came from a deeper place. She didn't wear gowns or jewels. She wore simple clothes, her hair tied back, her hands gently holding a child's face. In Somalia, 1992, standing amid famine and despair, she said softly, "I've seen what hunger does. I know what it feels like to have nothing. If I can help, I must." It was no longer about being seen. It was about seeing others. And for the first time in her life, she felt whole. The little girl who had once danced in secret for freedom was now traveling the world to bring hope to others. The woman who once longed for her father's protection was now protecting thousands of children. Hollywood gave her fame, but in the dust of forgotten villages, Audrey Hepburn found her redemption.
In her final years, Audrey Hepburn radiated a calm that seemed almost otherworldly. She had traded the glamour of Hollywood for something infinitely more beautiful: peace. By the early 1990s, her health began to decline. She was diagnosed with a rare form of abdominal cancer in 1992. Even then, she faced it with the same quiet strength that had carried her through war, heartbreak, and fame. She refused pity. Instead, she continued her humanitarian work for as long as her body would allow. When doctors told her to rest, she smiled and said, "I have to do what I can while I can." In December 1992, after returning from Somalia, she was flown to Los Angeles for surgery. It was too late. The disease had spread. Friends and family gathered at her side, and in January 1993, Audrey Hepburn passed away at her home in Tolochenaz, Switzerland, surrounded by her loved ones. She was only 63. Gregory Peck, her friend and Roman Holiday co-star, broke down as he read her favorite poem, Eternal Love. The world mourned not just the loss of a movie star, but of something purer, a symbol of goodness, grace, and quiet dignity. Even after death, Audrey's light didn't fade. Her work with UNICEF continued to inspire generations. Her films, her elegance, and her compassion became timeless. For many, she remains the definition of beauty, not the kind found in magazines, but the kind that lives in the soul. For beautiful eyes, look for the good in others. For beautiful lips, speak only words of kindness. And for poise, walk with the knowledge that you are never alone. Those words, once spoken by Audrey, became her legacy, a guide for how to live with heart and humility in a world obsessed with perfection. Today, she rests beneath a simple white cross in the small Swiss cemetery of Tolochenaz. No marble statue, no golden plaque, just a name carved gently in stone: Audrey Hepburn. And every spring, people still come, leaving tulips, daisies, and notes of gratitude. They come not to mourn, but to remember. Because Audrey Hepburn was never just a star. She was a reminder that true beauty shines brightest in kindness, and that even the gentlest souls can change the world. Her light never faded. It simply became part of the world she loved so much.
If you believe Audrey's light still shines, keep it alive. Hit like, share her story, and subscribe to Screen Icons. We celebrate not just the faces, but the souls that made Hollywood eternal.